From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
It's not just the Carolinas as rain soaks harvest in the Midwest.
I'm Michelle Rook. It's been a challenging season for hay and alfalfa production here in southeast South Dakota. I'll have the story coming up.
In agribusiness, what about soybean prices?
Well, when you get a 20-cent move in the bean market, it's probably going to be China-driven around trade.
Machinery Pete has price data on used grain handling equipment, and it's a punch of color for the Australian countryside.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. A new week and multiple parts of the country putting harvest on pause while waiting for fields to dry out. Parts of the Midwest dealing with heavy rains and flooding last week. Some areas seeing between 6 and 10 inches of rain over several days. While in the southern plains, rains this weekend soaking large areas. And on the coast, severe weather and flooding from Florence still causing issues for residents. This week, meteorologists say a cold front is bringing a big change in temperatures and expectations for harvest. USDA says a week ago, corn harvest was just 9% complete nationwide. Soybeans were 6% cut. We'll get a fresh update from USDA later this afternoon. Alfalfa producers in the western corn belt are harvesting their 5th cutting this month and wrapping up what's been an extremely frustrating year thanks to Mother Nature. Michelle Rook takes us to the field of one of the top alfalfa producing states in the nation, South Dakota, to get the story.
Record rainfall and flooding here in southeastern South Dakota this season has made it one of the most challenging years for putting up good quality alfalfa most producers can ever remember. For Gayville hay producer Gary Freeberg, only one other season even comes close to 2018.
The only one that ever topped it here is 84.
That's because record rains fell in June in southeastern South Dakota, northwest Iowa, and southwest Minnesota, and they didn't stop.
Around the middle of June, it started raining. We received 20 plus inches of rain in June and another 6 inches of rain in July.
That flooded thousands of acres of cropland, especially along the river bottom. And alfalfa is a crop that doesn't like wet feet.
You can stand with water on alfalfa for about 2 days, and after that it kind of cooks it, and then it just takes the stand away.
So he says many alfalfa meadows were damaged.
We have anywhere from slight damage to moderate damage to a lot of damage to where it's just a complete wipeout.
It has made things very difficult, from putting up various degrees of drowned out hay to some fields didn't take any damage at all.
Amy Freeberg says what added to the frustration is they had replanted many meadows this spring.
A year ago we had major winter kill, so we had a lot of replant from last year, and so those brand new meadows are always your best bet. They're always that kick out the nicest hay.
The result is tonnage will be down substantially for alfalfa producers in one of the top forage production areas in the nation.
For our operation, I would say right at somewhere between 40 and 60%. I'll know more about it when we get done with the fields.
And hay quality, which is important especially for dairy producers, has also suffered.
Quality is really off this year. We went through our first cutting, and the first cutting went up okay. Second cutting when we got into June, third cutting when we got into July, just a challenge.
So Freebergs have cleaned up the field, salvaged what alfalfa they can, and will look forward to a new season.
No matter what, you still got to go out there and cut it and clean it up and bale it and get it off of the field.
This isn't my first rodeo, and a lot of these fields and that, we're gonna spray them and we're gonna start all over next spring.
In South Dakota, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
Now on the crop side, farmers may be facing billions of dollars in damages. Early farm reports confirming pre-storm worries about losses to tobacco, cotton, and corn crops. North Carolina industry leaders remain anxious about whether sweet potatoes and peanuts will suffer as well. 5 of the top 6 farming counties in that state were the hardest hit areas. North Carolina Agriculture Commissioner Steve Troxler saying Thursday he expects total farm monetary losses to be in the billions of dollars in the state. And tobacco could be the North Carolina field crop taking the biggest hit.
The biggest problem now is all of these crops, tobacco included, is harvested with machinery, with machines. And after 16 inches of rain, we can't get those machines in the field. It's too be wet anyway, so we haven't been able to really make an attempt to harvest any before now anyway. And by the time we can, there won't be, tobacco-wise, there won't be anything left by then. The way it's gone down in the last 2 days, there's just nothing left.
About 40% of tobacco was still in the field when Florence arrived, and an industry group projecting leaf losses could be $350 million. The state's agriculture commissioner saying North Carolina likely won't have preliminary crop damage estimates until the end of this week. Now, even though Florence has left, rescues in the Carolinas continue this morning. In its shadow, there are renewed calls to examine the hurricane rating system, as some storm victims say it doesn't adequately account for rainfall. As Hurricane Florence pushed across open water, it was rated a Category 4 storm, but as it drew closer to land, its ranking dropped to a Category 2 and then 1 as it made landfall. With a lesser intensity on the Saffir-Simpson scale, some residents deciding to ride out the storm. Now, storms are categorized by wind strength. While the winds were diminished, the rainfall did not. And now record-setting flooding is covering cities like Wilmington and New Bern. Several meteorologists and disaster experts say something needs to change, or at least add to the scale to reflect the real risk in hurricanes.
There's a significant danger in focusing too much on category with storms like Hurricane Florence or Harvey. The impacts of those storms are much broader than wind speed, but yet that's what the categories in the Saffir-Simpson scale give us. We need to have a way of conveying the impacts of the storm, rainfall, surge, and tornadoes, not just the wind. All you have to do is think about Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Harvey, now Hurricane Florence. Neither of these storms were really above Category 1 when they did their most damage. Of course, Harvey was a Cat 4 at landfall, but most of that rain fell in Houston when it was a tropical storm.
The 5 hurricane categories are being measured through the 47-year-old Saffir-Simpson scale. Once a storm hits 74 miles per hour, it's considered a Category 1 hurricane. Until it ratchets up, it reaches the top of the scale at Category 5 at 157 miles per hour. But in cases like Florence, Harvey, Sandy, and 2012, many experts say the scale didn't quite tell the story because it focused on wind and not water. To policy in Washington, D.C., there are less than a handful of legislative days left in September, meaning there's only a small window to finish a new farm bill before it expires on September 30th. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst saying negotiations have, quote, taken a turn in the wrong direction. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley telling reporters he hasn't had a conversation with Committee Chairman Pat Roberts on the farm bill for 2 weeks. Now, Grassley says he hopes the work can get done.
But if it goes over into the early weeks of October, before we adjourn for the election, which probably be around October 20th or so, then that'll still be soon enough, even though the existing law sunsets. It's not going to create any problems until you get into November. And then if we don't get something done by then, we're going to have to extend the 2014 Farm Bill into 2019.
On the trade front, India and the U.S. are currently in negotiations on a trade package. Reuters reporting the discussions are looking to remove long-standing disagreements between the two countries that would strengthen ties. The two countries have been going back and forth on steel tariffs as well as duties on agricultural products. The two sides began talks in June, and a source with knowledge of the negotiations tells Reuters, "We are closely negotiating a discrete package of trade issues, and it will amount to a pretty substantive agreement." Both sides expecting negotiations to wrap up within a few weeks. Also on trade, a top U.S. official are actively considering whether the U.S. should re-enter the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. The deal may be dependent on how China reacts to fresh U.S. tariffs, but President Trump would have to change his mind about re-entering that agreement. With a trade war escalating with China, however, Japan and others are encouraging the U.S. to reconsider. David Harker with the AgDay weather team is in this morning. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Clinton. We've got this picture on Twitter from Justin Fastert. He lives in Rock Rapids, Iowa. Now, just said this last week that they saw more than 10 inches of rain. Fields are flooded and cattle were being moved to higher ground. And Lonnie Perry sent in this photo, shared it from Northwest Ohio of the harvest. He says corn harvest in that part of the state is off and running. The crop is coming in at 22% moisture. Take a look at the drought monitor and you'll notice that some areas of the United States do need more rain than others. Four Corners region, as you notice on the screen, in the exceptional drought areas there in the southeast, which don't need more rain showers, could see some in the next week, 2 months. So we'll be watching that very carefully. That's after Florence made its way through the southeast. We'll have a look at the weather forecast in more detail coming up, but here's a look at some hometown temps.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
All right, when we come back, we'll get you started on the week ahead with a look at recent market action from AgriTalk's Chip Flory, plus Machinery Pete is here.
Hey, stay tuned, folks. Coming up, I'm going to share some pretty surprising data on used grain handling equipment.
And we'll visit the land down under where wildflowers are in full bloom. In agribusiness, the Dow may be at record levels, but commodities are sputtering. Let's see how last week finished from the floor of the CME in Chicago.
Soybeans were lower. Those trade wars still hover over the prices. The pullback from yesterday's rally, and exports being down, the big crop is still on traders' mind. That's really pressuring the market a little bit. We haven't broken through that $8 mark, but still, it's looking really weak overall today. Not kind of lackluster trade. The positive thing is that we're still higher for the entire week for soybeans. So thank goodness for that. We're gonna hang on to that one positive thing. Now corn rose today. It was up almost 4 cents today. Exports are ahead of last year. That was really something good. The U.S. dollar index has actually been its lowest since the last month. Maybe that's helping a little bit too. It seems that the futures were adding to yesterday's gains. We're at a 50% recovery of the USDA report from last week. So that looks really good for the corn side, and it looks like it's going to continue to move higher. Today in cattle, the market was mixed, maybe even a little bit firm. Even though it's been edging lower all week, the market is still strong and still hanging on to the profits, the big rally, the limit move we had last Friday. I'm Virginia McGathy here in Chicago.
Soybeans now with 8 on the board. Can anything drag those prices higher? Well, Chip Flory answers that question in today's analysis from the road.
Thanks so much. Yeah, here now with Chip Flory, Farm Journal economist, host of AgriTalk and AgriTalk After the Bell. I know last week, Chip, there were a lot of market happenings to talk about, but on Thursday saw a positive reaction in the soybean market. Was it China? Was it South America? What drove that?
Well, when you get a 20-cent move in the bean market, it's probably going to be China-driven around trade. And the rumor was that China bought beans from Argentina, but Argentina doesn't have the beans to ship to China, so Argentina was going to buy the beans from the U.S. and then ship them on to China. That was the rumor. Is it true? Well, we've got to wait and find out. It could be that we do see Argentina come in and buy U.S. beans.
But something has to lead to that rumor, right? So there had to be some type of happening that led some of the trade to believe that we were going to see a movement on beans.
Yeah, well, actually, no, there doesn't have to be anything behind it. And this is seriously one of those things where we just have to sit and wait and see if Argentina does buy beans.
Well, we'll look and see if Argentina buys beans this week. We also are watching Farm Bill. We're also watching NAFTA negotiations. Some of the policy things that are happening in Washington. Is that enough to move the market this week, or really do we need to see something budge on China?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's going to, the Washington stuff I don't think is going to have a lot of impact on the market for a while. That's because we're harvesting a record bean crop here in the U.S.
Right.
Brazil is planting what is expected to be a record bean crop just simply because of their increase in acres. So we're going to be looking at U.S. weather. We're going to be looking at weather down in Brazil in the week ahead. And that's really is what's going to drive this market here in the week ahead.
All right, what to watch this week. Chip Flory, thank you so much. Stay with us. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have a check of weather right here on Ag Day.
Let's take a look at the jet stream, and obviously this is going to show us the upper level atmosphere. You'll be able to tell where system after system will roll in from. The big story is going to be what's out to the west. Not a lot of rain in the near future. In fact, above normal temperatures, which we'll show you coming up in the days to come. We move from today through Tuesday, and it becomes more active, especially in the northern portion of the United States. I do expect to see more moisture coming. It will come to the southeast and eastern coast, which unfortunately don't need it. That's as we look to the next 7 to 10 and even upwards of 30 days. We become more zonal, especially across the plain states, and you'll notice that big ridge building out in the western plain states. That means dry conditions conditions and drought continue, and this will be later on this week. So let's get into our forecast and talk about temperatures this week. Above normal on the eastern coastline, all the way up into the northeast, stretching down into the Florida Panhandle, as well as extreme eastern Texas. We've got this big swath of below normal temperatures coming through the northern plain states, the Midwest, stretching all the way down through central Texas, and then back out in the Four Corners region toward California and the western coast, above normal temperature-wise. Now, when we start talking precipitation, quite a bit of the United States above normal on that side of things. Basically, everybody east of the Mississippi River will see above normal precipitation, while the drought continues in the Four Corners region, and the below normal precip will hang around in the northwest. We transition and take a look 30 days out. You'll see that small bullseye there in the central portion of the United States, including Nebraska, Kansas, as well as Iowa and Missouri. This is below normal when we talk temperatures. Equal chances or more normal temperatures in the Great Lakes, the upper plain states down in Texas, and you notice in red, the above normal temperatures remain out west. The moisture continues to roll in 30 days out, especially down south in areas of Texas, as well as the southeast. Above normal rainfall, something that we don't need, something that we've seen too much of with all the flooding that's occurred from what was Florence, Hurricane Florence, that moved in a bit ago. You notice the below normal precipitation continues to sit out in the northwest. This will be something that becomes more common as we even look to the days to come and weeks to come for that matter, so be prepared for those type of conditions. Take a look at Riverdale, California. Sunny, warmer, and 89 degrees, low of 54. Let's move to Minnesota, Benson, Minnesota to be exact, 69 with showers and storms, and down in the southeast, Macon, Georgia, 87 with storms.
When we come back, we'll talk harvest equipment and recent auction prices, and later, the Australian countryside is bathed in wildflowers. Take a tour today on In the Country. Machinery Pete knows it's harvest time across the Midwest. Well, today he shares some recent harvest equipment prices as the grain rolls in.
All right, now folks, you would think right before harvest that used grain handling equipment would be red hot. But it's interesting, over my almost 29 years of compiling auction sale prices, it historically has not been the case. August and September, kind of a softer period for pricing. You know, we aren't sure where yields are going to come out, a little bit of back off there. But I tell you what, in 2018, that's not the case with used grain handling equipment. It's probably the hottest category I see right now. Now here's some examples for you. On a farm auction a week ago Friday in northeast South Dakota, this 2014 Westfield MKX 160-125 auger, a big monster, 125 foot by 16 inch. This thing sold for $50,000, and that's the highest auction price I've ever seen on an auger. Now last Tuesday on a farm auction up in west central Michigan, they had 5 Brent 744 gravity wagons. Now 3 of them went for $14,500, and the other 2 went for $13,750 and $13,25. Now folks, $14,500 on a Brent 744, highest auction price in 4 years. And I'm seeing the same thing with good condition grain trailers. And this goes back a little farther into August. Now here's a picture of a 2011 TEMPS 42-foot grain trailer that sold August 4th on a super nice farm auction in east central Nebraska. And it brought $30,000. And again, for $30,000 on a 7-year-old grain trailer, that's pretty strong stuff.
The colorful signs of the season are blooming in Australia. We'll take a trip to the outback next.
In the Country, brought to you by Kubota's M7060, built to get the job done. See KubotaUSA.com or your local Kubota dealer for more information.
It's been a mixed up year in Australia. Some places have witnessed epic drought, while in Western Australia, wildflower season has arrived early. The state's Midwest is abloom with carpets of color and what's been described as one of the best displays in a decade. Experts say winter rainfall delivered ideal conditions for a stunning wildflower spectacle. Native flowers are widespread in the north of Western Australia to the wheat belt region further south. Now, it's a stark contrast to the patchy and dry conditions seen in recent years.
This year has got to be one of the best years I have seen in a dozen years. It's been a long time since we have seen the carpets of flowers around, and we can put that down to good rains and then good continuing rains.
Well, we didn't really know what to expect because over in Queensland we haven't got a lot of wildflowers, And we knew there'd be a lot, but we didn't quite know how many and how big a variety, and we were shocked.
The street's lined with caravans on a daily basis. They either a lot stay, a lot drive through, but it's great. They stop, they buy lunch, they fill their caravan fridges up from the local grocers, and they stop and have a cup of coffee.
For some of these quiet towns, it's been a welcome cash injection, and the wildflowers are expected to hang around for at least the next few months. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your week with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.